Good morning, boys and girls. Today we're going to continue reading Flora and Ulysses. We are going to first look at our packet and turn to page 6. Yes, page 6. There are small little page numbers down here in the right-hand corner. And before you listen to the story, I do want you to pause the video and then look up these 2 vocabulary words and then draw the pictures for them. And then we are going to read our story. All right. Today we're going to be reading several chapters, so there's going to be several spots where you're going to have to pause the video and complete a couple of worksheets. The first thing that you already should have done is page 6 and find the 2 definitions of the vocabulary words. Write down the definition and then draw a picture for those. Yesterday we started the book and we learned that Flora lives next to the how do we say their name? Tickmans? Is that it? That last name? Yes, Tickham. So Flora lives next to the Tickhams, and they got the dad of the Tickhams, I'm just going to say Tickmans, got the mom a vacuum cleaner for her birthday, and it was a super duper Ulysses 2000X vacuum cleaner that went everywhere, did everything. It even vacuumed outside, so she took it outside to try it. And then what happened at the end of the chapter? She ended up vacuuming the squirrel, right? So chapter 2 is the mind of a squirrel. Not much goes on in the mind of a squirrel. Huge portions of what is loosely termed the squirrel brain are given over to one thought: food. The average squirrel cognition goes something like this: I wonder what there is to eat. This thought is then repeated with small variations. Example, where's the food? Man, I'm sure hungry. Is that a piece of food? And are there more pieces of food? Some 6,000 or 7,000 times a day. I wonder if I have a squirrel brain. All of this is to say that when the squirrel in the Tickmans' backyard got swallowed up by the Ulysses 2000X, there weren't a lot of terribly profound thoughts going through his head. As the vacuum cleaner roared toward him, he did not, for instance, think, here, at last is my fate to meet me. He did not think, oh, please give me one more chance and I will be good. What he thought was, man, I sure am hungry. And then there was a terrible roar, and he was sucked right off his feet. At that point, there was no thoughts in the squirrel head, not even thoughts of food. And that, my friends, is the end of chapter 2. Some of these chapters are super short. There's a lot of chapters in this book, but some are super short. So I want you to pause in just a second after I tell you what you're going to do. And for chapter 2, it's called The Mind of a Squirrel. I want you to fill in the thought bubble for the squirrel as he is thinking about the vacuum coming towards him, or as he is getting vacuumed up. And then over here you can add to the scene with the vacuum. So you're going to write or draw a picture in the squirrel's thought bubble, and then you can add to the picture of the vacuum in the scene with the vacuum. Pause the video, do that, but then come back because we're not done. All right, did you guys add to the picture and fill in the squirrel's thought bubble? Look how short chapter 3 is. It's just 2 paragraphs, so you'll be listening for a second. Chapter 3 is called The Death of a Squirrel. Seemingly swallowing a squirrel was a bit much, even for the powerful, indomitable, indoor-outdoor Ulysses 2000X. Mrs. Tickman's birthday machine let out an uncertain roar and stuttered to a stop. Miss Tickman bent over and looked down at the vacuum cleaner. There was a tail sticking out of it. "For heaven's sakes," said Mrs. Tickman. "What's next?" She dropped to her knees and gave the tail a tentative tug. She stood. She looked around the yard. "Help!" she said. "I think I've killed a squirrel." Oh, no. First of all, I do want to let you know a little tidbit about when you are reading. If there is a name in a book that is a little bit tricky for you to read or say or remember, as long as you say the same thing every time you see that name, you can say whatever name you want to say. But you have to remember to say it that exact same way every time. Otherwise, you'll be adding characters to the story. So if you look at their name, it looks like it says Tickham, but for me to say Tickham, that sounds really hard. And Tickman just comes better. So I will let you know that I am saying Tickman, but I will continue saying Tickman through the whole book, okay? But when we watch the movie, that might not be how they say the name, and that's okay. All right, for our Chapter 3, Death of the Squirrel, I want you to make a prediction. She, Mrs. Tickman, bent over and looked down at the vacuum cleaner. There was a tail sticking out. She looked around the yard, and then, what do you think is going to happen? She's yelling for help. She said she thought she killed the squirrel. What is going to happen? So take a minute, pause the video, write at least 2, maybe if you can, write 3 sentences about what you think is going to happen. All right. Did you make your prediction? At the bottom of our vocab page is 3 more boxes. And in those 3 boxes, I want you to draw a scene of events, so a beginning, a middle, and an end, of what you see from your window. So you're going to pretend that you're Flora, and I want you to, not predict, but draw what you see happening from your window as you are watching Miss Tickman in her yard. Do that, pause, and then come back. We're going to read one more chapter. All right. Chapter 4, a surprisingly helpful cynic. Remember, a cynic is someone who's doing it for their self, and not for others. Flora ran from her broom. She ran down the stairs. As she ran, she thought, for a cynic, I am surprisingly a helpful person. Because remember, cynics aren't usually helpful to other people. They're only doing things for themselves. So, she's being a helpful cynic. She went out the back door. Her mother called to her. She said, "Where are you going, Flora Belle?" Flora didn't answer her. She never answered her mother when she called her Flora Belle. Sometimes she didn't answer her mother when she called her Flora either. Flora ran through the tall grass and cleared the fence between her yard and the Tickmans in a single bound. "Move out of the way," said Flora. She gave Miss Tickman a shove and grabbed hold of the vacuum cleaner. It was heavy. She picked it up and shook it. Nothing happened. She shook harder. The squirrel dropped out of the vacuum cleaner and landed with a plop on the grass. It didn't look that great. He was missing a lot of fur. Vacuumed off, Flora assumed. His eyelids fluttered, his chest rose and fell and rose again, and then it stopped moving altogether. Flora knelt. She put a finger on the squirrel's chest. At the back of each issue, The Illuminated Adventures of the Amazing Incandesto, there was a series of bonus comics. One of Flora's very favorite bonus comics was entitled Terrible Things Can Happen to You. As a cynic, Flora found it wise to be prepared. Who knew what horrible, unpredictable things would happen next? Terrible things can happen to you detailed what action to take if you inadvertently consume plastic fruit. This happened more than you would suppose. Some plastic fruit was extremely realistic looking. How to perform the Heimlich maneuver on your elderly Aunt Edith if she choked on a stringy piece of steak at an all-you-can-eat buffet. The Heimlich maneuver is what you do if someone is choking, where you stand behind them and you thrust them to help them get the food out of their throat, unstuck. What to do if you are wearing a striped shirt and a swarm of locusts run, locusts eat stripes, and, of course, how to administer everyone's favorite life-saving technique, CPR. Terrible things can happen to you did not, however, detail exactly how someone was supposed to give CPR to a squirrel. I'll figure it out, said Flora. What will you figure out, said Miss Tickman. Flora didn't answer her. Instead, she bent down and put her mouth on the squirrel's mouth. It tasted funny. If she were forced to describe it, she would say it tasted exactly like squirrel. Fuzzy, damp, and slightly nutty. Don't do that. That's gross. Have you lost your mind, said Miss Tickman. Flora ignored her. She breathed into the squirrel's mouth. She pushed down on his small chest. She started to count. And that is the end of chapter 4. So, for chapter 4, to the rescue. Flora flew to help, bounded over the fence, and pushed Miss Tickman out of the way. She started CPR on the squirrel, saying it tasted like fuzzy, damp, and nutty. What do you think CPR is? What do you think CPR is? Write a sentence about that. Incandesto! What does this have to do with Flora running to the rescue? What does incandesto have to do with Flora running to the rescue? I want you to write a couple of sentences about how you think that incandesto, is related to the things that Flora does. We're going to be hearing a lot about incandesto in connection with what Flora is doing, but I want you to make that connection now. What do you think? How did they word it? What does it have to do with Flora running to the rescue? Okay. After you do those 2 pages, you're done for today. I hope that you guys are enjoying the book, though, and that you find it a little bit funny, at least. Have a good day, guys.